Ambassador Grant stood in the center of the Galactic Council chambers, her hands clasped behind her back. The massive hall stretched above her, filled with representatives from 200 different species. She had been speaking for 20 minutes, but she could see the truth in their eyes. They were not listening. "We request access to defensive shield technology," said, keeping her voice steady. 3 months ago, raiders attacked our colonies on the outer rim. 14,000 people died. Most of them were families, children. Chancellor, the bird-like Avarian who led the council, clicked his beak in what might have been laughter. His feathers ruffled with amusement. "Ambassador Grant," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Earth has been a council member for only 30 years. You have been in space for barely 2 centuries. My people have traveled the stars for 6,000 years. Do you understand the difference?" Felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. "I understand that our people are dying while the council watches." "Your people," Counselor interrupted. The reptilian leaned forward in his seat, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. "Let us speak plainly, Ambassador. Humans are aggressive, emotional, unpredictable. We have seen your history. You fought wars on your own planet for thousands of years, and now you want weapons." "We want to defend ourselves," replied. "Is that not what the Council promises, protection for all members?" Spread his wings slightly. "The Council provides protection through our combined fleets. We have 50,000 ships patrolling Council space. Your species contributes 300 vessels, most of them outdated. Perhaps if Earth focused less on expansion and more on cooperation, you would not need additional defenses." The other Council members murmured their agreement, looked around the chamber and saw the same expression on every alien face. Contempt. They looked at her the way someone might look at a child pretending to understand adult conversations. "Then what about the trade restrictions?" she asked, changing tactics. "The new proposal would limit human access to 70% of Council trade routes. Our economy depends on those routes." "Your economy grew too fast," another Council member said, a floating creature that could never remember the name of bobbed in the air. "You undercut prices. You negotiate too aggressively. The other members need protection from human business practices." Took a deep breath. She had known this trip would be difficult, but she had hoped for something. Anything. Back on Earth, people were waiting for her to return with good news. Families were grieving their dead, colonies needed defenses, and the Council was worried about trade competition. "I request a vote on the technology sharing proposal," she said formally. Nodded, "Very well. All in favor of granting Earth access to advanced defensive technology." Not a single hand, claw, or tentacle moved. "Opposed." The chamber lit up with responses. 200 species voted against Earth's request. Only the human delegation, 3 people in a sea of aliens, remained still. "The proposal is rejected," announced. "Now let us move to the next matter, the trade restriction vote." Wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them exactly what she thought of their council and their rules, but she was a diplomat, and diplomats stayed calm. She returned to her seat next to Admiral, who commanded Earth's defense fleet. "This is a waste of time," whispered. His face was red with anger. "They're never going to help us." "I know," whispered back. She watched as the council voted on the trade restrictions. The result was predictable. 187 members voted yes, 13 abstained. Only humans voted no. "The trade restrictions will take effect in 60 days, announced. Earth will adjust its trade practices accordingly. Leaned closer too. "This will destroy our economy. Half our worlds depend on those trade routes." Before could respond, Counselor spoke again. His voice was casual, almost friendly. "Ambassador Grant, I should mention something about those raiders who attacked your colonies." Looked up sharply. "You have information about them." "Oh yes," said. He glanced at several other council members who seemed to be trying not to laugh. "You see, they were not random raiders. They were independent contractors, hired by certain council members." The chamber went completely silent, felt her blood turn to ice. "What did you say?" she asked slowly. "It was a lesson," another council member explained. A massive creature covered in armor plates. "Earth needed to learn humility, to understand your place in the galaxy. The raiders were told to be thorough, to make an impact." Stood up so fast his chair fell over. "You murdered 14,000 civilians to teach us a lesson." "Please, Admiral," said, waving one wing dismissively. "Murder is such a harsh word. Think of it as education. Expensive education, certainly, but sometimes the best lessons cost the most. Several council members laughed openly now, stood slowly, her legs shaking. She had come here hopping for help, begging for assistance. And now she learned that the council itself had killed her people. Ambassador's hand was on her shoulder. What do we do? Looked around the chamber one last time. She saw species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years, ancient civilizations with incredible technology and vast fleets. They looked at humanity the way gods might look at insects. Annoying, insignificant, barely worth noticing. She thought about the reports she had read. Families torn apart, children who would never grow up, colonies that would take decades to rebuild. All of it done deliberately by these creatures to teach humanity to stay small and quiet. Something inside broke, not in a bad way, in a clarifying way. She suddenly understood exactly what she needed to do. "Counselor," she said, her voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. The chamber fell silent. "Earth hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." The silence lasted for 3 seconds. Then the entire chamber erupted in laughter. Aliens of every shape and size laughed until tears ran from their eyes or equivalent organs. "Withdraws," managed to speak through his amusement. "Ambassador, where will you go? How will Earth survive without council protection, without access to our trade networks, without our technology?" Walked toward the exit, following close behind. She stopped at the doorway and turned back. "You asked where we will go," she said quietly. "We will go home, we will close our borders, we will remember this day. And Chancellor, I promise you this with everything I am. You will regret teaching us that the galaxy respects only strength." She left before they could respond. Behind her, the laughter continued, but it had a nervous edge now, caught up with her in the hallway outside. "What just happened?" "We learned the truth," she said. "The Council will never see us as equals. They will only respect us if we have the power to make them respect us." Her communicator buzzed. President Daniel Carter's face appeared on the screen. He was back on Earth, watching the proceedings via transmission. "I saw everything," he said. His expression was grim. "Come home, Ambassador, we have work to do." "What kind of work?" asked. "The kind that takes time," Carter replied. "Admiral, when you return, report directly to me. I am authorizing Project Horizon. We are going to build the future the Council refused to give us peacefully." Frowned. "Project Horizon? Sir, I do not know what that is." President Carter smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You will. It is time humanity learned to build our own strength, however long it takes." The transmission ended, and walked back to their ship in silence. Behind them, the Council continued its session, already forgetting about the primitive humans who had just stormed out. They had no idea what they had started. 75 years would pass before they learned their mistake, and by then, it would be far too late. Director Lisa Hammond stood in the observation deck and looked out at the asteroid field. Somewhere in that darkness, hidden among billions of rocks, humanity was building its future. She had been overseeing Project Horizon for 3 years now, and the scale still amazed her. "Director, the latest production numbers are in," her assistant said, handing her a tablet. "We completed 12 hull sections this month. That puts us ahead of schedule." Lisa studied the numbers carefully. 12 hull sections did not sound like much, but each one would become part of a warship larger and more powerful than anything the Council possessed. The problem was time. Even with 50 hidden shipyards working constantly, building a fleet took decades. "How long until the first ship is ready for testing?" she asked. 8 years if everything goes perfectly." Lisa nodded. She would be an old woman by the time Project Horizon finished. Her children would be middle-aged. But that was the point. This was not about today or tomorrow. This was about making sure humanity never again had to bow to species who thought murdering civilians was acceptable education. She walked through the facility, checking on different sections. Thousands of workers moved through the corridors, all of them volunteers. Everyone on Earth knew about Project Horizon now. The Council had cut off all trade and communication after humanity left, thinking isolation would force Earth to crawl back and beg for readmission. Instead, humanity had pulled back to their own space and started building. Every human colony, every space station, every settlement contributed. Resources that would have gone to luxuries now went to shipyards. Taxes increased. Living standards dropped, and nobody complained. Lisa understood why. The galaxy had shown humanity the truth. Peace only existed for those strong enough to defend it. The Council had proven that with 14,000 graves. "Director Hammond?" a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Cole walking toward her. He led the Weapons Research Division, and he looked exhausted. "You should be sleeping," Lisa said. "You have been in the lab for 30 hours. "I can sleep when we are done," replied. He held up a small device barely larger than his thumb. "I wanted to show you this. We finished the first working prototype." "Of what?" "Antimatter containment for torpedo warheads. The Council uses fusion weapons. This is exponentially more powerful." He smiled, but it was a tired smile. "When we hit them with these, their shields will not even slow the blast down." Lisa took the device carefully. It looked so small, so harmless. But she knew the calculations. One of these could destroy a Council battleship in a single hit. "How long until we can manufacture them in quantity?" she asked. 10 years, maybe 12. The containment system is complicated, and we need to build entirely new production facilities. Took the device back and turned it over in his hands. "My daughter asked me yesterday why I never come home anymore. She is 7 years old and she barely knows me. But I keep thinking about those 14,000 people, the families, the children who died because the Council wanted to teach us humility." "Your daughter will understand one day," Lisa said quietly, "when she lives in a galaxy where nobody dares to hurt humans ever again." Nodded and walked away. Lisa continued her inspection, moving through the shipyard's different sections. In one bay, engineers tested new engine designs. Human ships would be faster than Council vessels because humans could handle higher acceleration. Most alien species would pass out or die at the speeds humanity considered normal. In another section, crews practiced linking their minds to ship computers through neural interfaces. The Council used simple computer systems to run their fleets. Human ships would respond as fast as human thoughts because the crew and the ship would be connected at a fundamental level. 20 years passed. Lisa retired, handing control of Project Horizon to her daughter. The first warship finally completed construction and began testing. They named it the Valiant. Captain Price commanded the Valiant during its shakedown cruise. She pushed the ship through maneuvers that would be impossible for any Council vessel. 8 gravity turns that slammed her into her seat even with the compensators running. Weapons tests that lit up the dark with fury. "All systems performing above specifications," her tactical officer reported. "Main guns are ready. Antimatter torpedoes loaded. Neural interface connection is stable." Smiled. She had been in space her entire adult life, serving on humanity's old, outdated ships. She had watched Council vessels fly past them like they were standing still. She had felt the shame of knowing her ship could not protect anything. But this ship was different. This ship was vengeance and justice wrapped in armor plating. "Take us through Pattern Omega," she ordered. Her crew connected fully to the Valiant through their neural links. The ship stopped being a machine and became an extension of their bodies. They dove toward an asteroid at full speed, then pulled up at the last second with perfect precision. They spun and rolled and danced through space in ways that would make Council crews pass out from the forces involved. "Perfect," said. "This ship will terrify them." More years passed. More ships joined the Valiant. The hidden shipyards worked without stopping. Entire generations grew up knowing they were building for a future they might never see. Children asked their parents why they worked such long hours. Parents told them about the Council's lesson and made them promise to never forget. 50 years after Earth left the Council, the fleet numbered 500 ships. Fleet Admiral Henry took command of the entire project. He was young, only 45, and he had been born the same year Earth walked out of the Council chambers. 500 ships, he said, reviewing the numbers with his staff. "That is more than we ever had in our entire history, but we need more. The Council has 50,000 vessels. Numbers matter in war." "Sir, at current production rates, we will reach 1,000 ships in 20 years, his chief engineer reported. Engineer was one of the oldest people still working on Project Horizon. He had been a young worker when Lisa Hammond first started the project. Now his hair was gray and his hands shook, but he refused to retire. 20 years, Henry repeated. "My children will be adults by then, but all right, we stay on schedule, quality over speed. Every ship needs to be perfect." The years continued to roll by. The Council occasionally sent probes toward human space, trying to see what Earth was doing behind its closed borders. Automated defense stations destroyed the probes before they could see anything. The Council assumed humanity was struggling in isolation, probably trying to rebuild their economy. They had no idea about the shipyards, the weapons, the training, the single-minded determination of an entire species that had learned the galaxy's lesson. Year 70 arrived. Engineer personally oversaw the completion of the 1,000th ship. His hands shook as he signed the final inspection report, and tears ran down his wrinkled face. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Fleet Admiral Henry reviewed the complete fleet. 1,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering and determination. Each one crewed by volunteers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Each one carrying weapons the Council did not even know existed. "All ships report ready, sir," his second-in-command said. "Crews are at full readiness, supplies are loaded, we can launch whenever you give the order." Henry thought about his grandparents, who had been young adults when Earth left the Council. He thought about all the people who had worked and died building this fleet, never seeing it completed. He thought about the 14,000 civilians murdered to teach humanity humility. "Prepare a message," he ordered. "Send it to Council space on all frequencies." "What should it say, sir?" Henry smiled. It was not a kind smile. "This is Earth, we are coming home." The message transmitted across the galaxy at light speed. It would take weeks to reach Council space. By then, the fleet would already be on its way. "All ships, this is Fleet Admiral," he broadcast to the entire fleet. 75 years ago, the Galactic Council murdered our people and laughed about it. They thought they taught us humility. Instead, they taught us that the galaxy respects only strength. Today, we show them exactly how well we learned that lesson. All ships, prepare to jump. We are going home. Chancellor barely looked up from his meal when his assistant brought him the message. He was eating something that humans would have found disgusting, but Avarians considered it a delicacy. His feathers were perfectly groomed, and he wore the symbols of his office with pride. "A message from Earth?" he asked, his beak clicking in amusement. "I did not know Earth still existed. What do they want? To beg for readmission to the Council?" His assistant, a younger Avarian named, shifted nervously. "The message is short, Chancellor. It says they are coming home." Laughed, the sound echoed through his private chambers. "Coming home? How dramatic. Probably a delegation of 3 ships wanting to negotiate. Send a squadron to escort them to the Council chambers. Make sure they understand the new membership requirements will be much stricter than before." "Yes, Chancellor," said, but he did not leave immediately. "Is there something else?" asked, finally looking up from his food. "Sir, some of the intelligence reports suggest we should be careful. Earth has been silent for 75 years. That is unprecedented." 75 years of sulking in their corner of space, corrected. "My predecessor, Chancellor, told me about the humans, emotional creatures who could not accept their place in the galaxy. They probably spent all this time trying to rebuild their economy after we cut them off from Council trade. Now they realize they need us." Nodded and left, returned to his meal, already forgetting about Earth. He had more important matters to worry about. The delegation wanted better trade terms. They were complaining about border disputes again. The Council had 50,000 problems, and Earth ranked somewhere near the bottom of the list. Across the galaxy, Admiral and received the same message. He commanded the Council Defense Fleet from his station orbiting Council Prime, the central world where the Council chambers were located. He was a decorated warrior from a species that valued military service above all else. His blue skin was covered in scars from a lifetime of battles, though most of them had been small conflicts with pirates and raiders. "Earth is coming," he asked his tactical officer. "How many ships?" "We do not know yet, sir. Long-range sensors have not detected anything." And pulled up Earth's file on his computer. 300 ships, it said. Last updated 75 years ago. He frowned slightly. Could they have built more in that time? "Even if they doubled their fleet, they would still have only 600 ships," he said aloud. "Against our 50,000, this is not a military threat. They want to negotiate." "Should we send an escort, sir?" "Yes, send Squadron 15. 200 ships should be more than enough to remind them who controls this galaxy," and leaned back in his chair. "And tell Captain Miller to be polite but firm. The humans need to understand that military power determines Council status." Captain Drew Miller received his orders with mixed feelings. He commanded one of the patrol squadrons assigned to the outer regions of Council space. He had never met a human, but he had heard the stories. They were aggressive, emotional, and unpredictable. 75 years ago, they had stormed out of the Council in a fit of anger. "All ships, this is Captain Miller," he broadcast to his squadron. "We are going to meet an Earth delegation at the old border zone. Maintain professional formation. If they try anything aggressive, warn them once, then disable their ships. But I doubt it will come to that. They probably just want to talk." His crew laughed. The idea of Earth threatening the Council was ridiculous. One of his junior officers started taking bets on how quickly the humans would beg for readmission. Meanwhile, in the intelligence division, things were less relaxed. Intelligence officer Reed sat in her office staring at her screens with growing unease. She was human, one of the few who had chosen to stay with the Council when Earth 75 years ago. She had been young then, barely 20, and she had believed the Council represented civilization and order. Now she was 95 years old, kept alive by Council medical technology that Earth never had access to. She had spent her entire career analyzing human capabilities for the Council, and the current numbers did not make sense. "Something is wrong," she muttered, pulling up industrial capacity estimates. Earth's production should have plateaued after losing Council trade, but the resource consumption patterns suggest massive industrial expansion. She ran the calculations again. According to her best estimates, Earth could have maybe 500 ships by now. That assumed they dedicated their entire economy to military production, which seemed unlikely. Humans were emotional, but they also valued quality of life. They would not sacrifice everything for weapons. Would they? Thought about the day Earth left the Council. She had been in the chambers, working as a junior analyst. She remembered Ambassador Grant's face when Counselor revealed the truth about the raiders, the absolute fury in those human eyes. She pulled up the casualty reports from that raid. 14,000 dead, mostly civilians, families, children. "No," she said quietly, "they would not. Even humans have limits." But doubt gnawed at her. She sent a report to her superiors recommending increased reconnaissance of human space. The report was filed and ignored. The Council had more important concerns. In the Council chambers, the various species went about their business. Trade disputes were resolved. Border agreements were negotiated. New technologies were shared among trusted members. Nobody talked about Earth. The humans had learned their lesson, and now they were coming back to apologize. It was the natural order of things. Counselor Ara was the only member who seemed worried. Her species was known for caution and careful planning. They rarely took risks and always prepared for the worst possible outcome. "I think we should take Earth's return seriously," she said during a closed session with other Council leaders. 75 years of complete silence is not normal behavior. "They were rebuilding," another counselor said dismissively. "What else could they have been doing?" "That is my point," Ara replied. "We do not know what they were doing. We should know. We should have been monitoring them." "We tried," said. "They destroyed every probe we sent, but that just proves they are paranoid and isolated. Species do not advance significantly in 75 years. It takes thousands of years to develop new technologies." Ara wanted to argue, but she could see it was pointless. The Council had ruled the galaxy for so long that they could not imagine being challenged. Strength was measured in time and numbers. Earth had neither. Captain Drew Miller's squadron reached the old Earth border zone 3 days later. They took up position in a standard escort formation, ready to guide the expected human delegation to Council Prime. "Any sign of them yet?" Miller asked his sensor operator. "No, sir, nothing on short-range scans. Wait." The operator's voice changed. "Sir, I am getting something on long-range sensors, multiple contacts jumping out of FTL." "How many contacts?" The operator stared at his screen. His hands moved across the controls, checking and rechecking the readings. "Sir, the computer must be malfunctioning. It says hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. The signatures are not matching anything in our database." Miller felt his stomach tighten. "Show me." The tactical display updated. Space itself seemed to tear open as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. First dozens appeared, then hundreds, then more. They kept coming. The computer struggled to count them all. "Contact the flagship," Miller ordered, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Tell them we have a situation." On his screen, the unknown ships arranged themselves into a formation that spoke of military precision. They were larger than council vessels, built with clean, aggressive lines that suggested one purpose: war. "Sir, I am counting 1,000 ships," his sensor operator said. "All of them appear to be warships. All of them are bigger than our largest battleships." Miller opened a communication channel toward the approaching fleet. "Unidentified vessels, this is Captain Drew Miller of the Galactic Council Defense Fleet. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." For a long moment there was no response. The 1,000 ships hung in space like a swarm of predators. Then a voice came back. It was human, male, calm, and absolutely cold. "This is Fleet Admiral Henry of the Earth Defense Force. Stand aside or be destroyed. This is your only warning." Miller felt sweat forming on his skin. His crew stared at him, waiting for orders. 200 ships against 1,000. The math was simple and terrifying. "Admiral," Miller said, trying to keep his voice professional, "I am authorized to escort you to Council Prime for negotiations. There is no need for hostilities." "We are not here to negotiate," replied. "We are here to settle accounts. Your council murdered 14,000 of our people 75 years ago. Today we collect payment for that crime. Stand aside, Captain. I will not ask again." Miller looked at his tactical display. His squadron was hopelessly outnumbered, but he had orders, he had duty. "I cannot let you pass," he said. "Then you will die," said simply. "I am sorry for that, but this is your choice, not mine." The transmission ended. Miller looked at his crew, young officers who had joined the fleet for prestige and adventure. They had trained for pirates and border skirmishes, not for this. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Captain Drew Miller gave the order to fire, and his squadron's weapons lit up the darkness. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the Earth fleet. For a moment, Miller felt hope. His weapons were hitting their targets. Surely the primitive humans would break and run. Then the Earth ships fired back. Miller had never seen weapons like these. The missiles moved faster than his point defense systems could track. Energy beams punched through shields that should have stopped them. His flagship shook as something hit the port side, and alarms screamed through the bridge. "Shields at 30%, his tactical officer shouted. "One hit did that. How is that possible?" On Miller's screen, he watched 3 of his ships simply disappear. Not disabled, not destroyed. Gone, erased from existence by weapons he did not understand. The Earth ships moved through his squadron like predators through prey, their formations tight and precise. "They are too fast," his helmsman yelled. "They are pulling 8 gravity turns. No biological crew should survive that." But the human ships did not just survive. They seemed to dance through space, moving in ways that violated everything Miller knew about fleet combat. They dove and rolled and spun with impossible grace, their weapons firing with perfect accuracy. Miller's squadron tried to surround several Earth ships, a standard tactic that always worked. The Council vessels outnumbered their targets 10 to 1. They should have been able to overwhelm them with concentrated fire. Instead, the Earth ships fought like cornered animals. They did not panic. They did not break formation. They simply killed everything around them with brutal efficiency. More Council ships disappeared from Miller's screens. "Retreat," Miller finally ordered. "All ships fall back to Council Prime." Of his 200 ships, only 15 survived to receive that order. The rest were debris and expanding clouds of gas. Miller's own ship limped away, its engines damaged and its shields nearly gone. Behind them, the Earth fleet did not pursue. They simply regrouped and continued toward Council Prime. Miller sent an emergency transmission ahead, his hands shaking. "This is Captain Miller to Council Defense Command. Earth has returned with 1,000 warships. They destroyed my squadron in minutes. This is not a negotiation. This is an invasion. Request immediate reinforcement." Admiral and received the message in disbelief. He played it 3 times, checking for signs of malfunction or deception. But Miller's battered ship appeared on sensors moments later, confirming every word. 1,000 ships, and said, "How? Where did Earth get the resources to build 1,000 ships?" "Sir, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked, and stared at the strategic display. The Earth fleet was 6 hours away from Council Prime. He commanded 10,000 ships in the defense fleet. Even with advanced weapons, Earth could not win against those numbers. Could they? "Activate the entire defense fleet," he ordered. Every ship, every crew, battle stations across all sectors. We will show these humans what happens when you challenge the Galactic Council. Within the hour, 10,000 warships converged on Council Prime. They formed a defensive wall in space, waiting for the Earth fleet to arrive, and stood on his command deck, watching the screens with grim determination. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth fleet," his communications officer said. "Put it through." A human face appeared on the main screen. He looked middle-aged, with short dark hair and cold eyes. His uniform was simple but clean, with Admiral's insignia on the collar. "I am Fleet Admiral Henry," the human said. "I assume you are Admiral N, commander of the Council Defense Fleet." "I am," and replied. "Admiral, you have attacked Council forces and invaded Council space. Surrender immediately, and your crews will be treated fairly under military law." Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, I am going to give you one chance, one opportunity to avoid what is about to happen. Withdraw your fleet. Accept Earth's terms for your surrender. You have 1 hour to decide." And felt anger flood through him. Surrender? To humans? To a species that had been in space for barely 2 centuries. "Admiral, you command 1,000 ships. I command 10,000. You have impressive weapons, but numbers matter in war. This is your chance to surrender, not mine." "I was afraid you would say that," replied quietly. "For what it is worth, Admiral, I am sorry. Most of your crews are probably good people following orders, but you gave the Council fleet to people who murder children and call it education, so this is what happens next." The transmission ended, and turned to his tactical officer. "All ships prepare for combat. Target priority is the human flagship. Concentrate fire and overwhelm them." The Earth fleet entered weapon range. For a moment, both sides held position, 10,000 ships facing 1,000 across the black void of space. Then and gave the order. "Fire!" The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled space with light and fury, and watched his screens, waiting to see the human ships break apart under the assault. Instead, the Earth fleet moved. They did not retreat or scatter. They advanced directly into the Council formation, their ships moving in patterns that seemed impossible. The neural interfaces that linked human crews to their vessels let them respond faster than any computer system. They thought, and their ships moved. They saw threats, and weapons fired. Lieutenant Jake Foster sat at his tactical station aboard the flagship Vengeance, his mind linked directly to the ship's systems. He could feel the vessel around him, every weapon and every shield. When threats appeared on his sensors, he did not need to enter commands. He simply thought about targets, and the Vengeance's weapons responded. "Incoming missiles from bearing 275, his captain said. Captain Bate commanded the Vengeance with calm efficiency, her own neural link keeping her aware of every aspect of the ship. Jake thought about the missiles, and the Vengeance's point defense systems destroyed them before they could get close. Around the flagship, the rest of the Earth fleet fought with the same deadly precision. The Council ships used numbers to try to surround and overwhelm individual human vessels. It was a good tactic. It should have worked. But Earth ships had been designed specifically for this scenario. They pulled maneuvers at accelerations that would kill most alien crews, spinning and rolling to keep weapons pointed at every threat. "Shield at 60%, Jake's co-pilot reported, taking multiple hits but holding. "Return fire," Captain ordered. "Antimatter torpedoes full spread." Jake selected targets and fired. The torpedoes were smaller than Council missiles but infinitely more deadly. When they hit, matter and antimatter annihilated each other in bursts of pure energy. Council shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, failed instantly. Ships disappeared in white-hot explosions. The battle raged for 6 hours. It was the largest space combat in galactic history, and it was completely one-sided. The Council had numbers, but Earth had spent 75 years building ships specifically to fight this battle. Every system, every weapon, every tactic had been designed to kill Council vessels. Human ships fought in formations that Council species physically could not match. They endured accelerations that would crush or kill most aliens. Their weapons tore through shields and armor like they were made of paper, and their crews, linked to their ships through neural interfaces, responded faster than any enemy could predict. Admiral N watched his fleet die. 1 hour into the battle, he had lost 2,000 ships. After 3 hours, 5,000 were gone. He kept ordering his remaining forces to concentrate fire, to use their numbers to overwhelm the humans. But the humans would not be overwhelmed. They fought like devils, each ship worth dozens of council vessels. They did not retreat. They did not hesitate. They simply killed everything that came near them. "Sir, we have lost 7,000 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "Our remaining forces are scattered and disorganized. We cannot win this." And looked at his screens. The human fleet was still essentially intact. They had lost ships, yes, but not many, maybe 30 or 40 total, against his 7,000 losses. "All ships full retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow. "Fall back to secondary positions." But there were no secondary positions. The battle was over. The Council Defense Fleet, 50,000 ships strong across the entire galaxy, had sent 10,000 to protect Council Prime. Now only 3,000 survived, and they were fleeing in disorder. The human flagship appeared on his screen. He could see fires burning inside the ship through damaged sections, but it was still operational, still deadly. "Admiral N," Fleet Admiral said, "your fleet is broken, your ships are fleeing. I could hunt them down and destroy everyone. But I am not interested in genocide. I am interested in justice." And said nothing. What could he say? He had just lost 7,000 ships to a fleet 1/10 his size. "Contact your Chancellor," continued. "Tell him Earth has returned. Tell him we are not here to negotiate. We are here to dictate terms. He has 24 hours to present himself in the council chambers. If he refuses, we will destroy every military installation in council space. Do you understand?" "I understand," and said quietly. The transmission ended, and looked around his command deck. His crew stared at their screens in shock. In 6 hours, everything they knew about galactic power had been shattered. On Council Prime below, Chancellor watched the battle through his windows. He saw the flashes of weapons fire in orbit. He saw Council ships burning and falling from the sky. And he finally understood what Ambassador Grant had meant 75 years ago. Earth had learned the lesson the Council taught. The galaxy respected only strength, and now Earth had more strength than anyone had imagined possible. The Council chambers were silent as Fleet Admiral Henry entered. He walked alone, wearing his dress uniform, his boots echoing on the polished floor. Every seat was filled with representatives from 200 species, but nobody spoke. They just watched the human who had shattered their fleet. Chancellor sat in his chair at the center of the room. His feathers were no longer perfectly groomed. He looked old and tired. Next to him stood Admiral N, his blue skin pale with shame. Henry stopped in the center of the chamber, the same spot where Ambassador Grant had stood 75 years ago. He looked around slowly, meeting the eyes of different species. Some looked angry, some looked afraid, most just looked defeated. 75 years ago, Henry began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "My people came to you for help. We asked for defensive technology after raiders murdered 14,000 of our civilians. You refused. Instead, you imposed trade restrictions that nearly destroyed our economy. And then you laughed." Said nothing. What could he say? Everyone in the chamber had seen the battle reports. 7,000 council ships destroyed. The pride of the galaxy's fleet broken in 6 hours. "Then we learned the truth," Henry continued. "Those raiders were not random criminals. They were hired by council members to teach us humility, to show us our place in the galaxy." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. 14,000 people, men, women, and children, murdered deliberately as education. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The species who had hired the raiders were not present. They had fled Council Prime when the Earth fleet arrived. "So we left," Henry said. "We went home, we closed our borders, and we built. For 75 years we built. 3 generations of humanity dedicated their lives to one single goal, making sure that nobody would ever again dare to harm our people and laugh about it." He pulled out a tablet and activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the chamber floor, ships under construction, weapons being tested, crews training in simulation chambers. "This is what 75 years of human determination looks like," Henry said. 1,000 warships, each one designed specifically to fight council vessels, each one crewed by volunteers who grew up knowing what you did to us, each one carrying weapons you did not know were possible. Finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost broken. "Admiral, what do you want? Revenge? Conquest? Are you here to destroy us?" Henry looked at the Chancellor for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No, Chancellor, we are not you. We did not build this fleet to conquer. We built it to ensure justice, and that is what we are here to claim." He changed the holographic display. Now it showed a document with terms written in clear language. "These are Earth's requirements for peace," Henry said. "First, the Council will disarm to a defensive force of 1,000 ships. No more. You have proven that large fleets in the hands of those who abuse power are dangerous to everyone." Several council members gasped. One stood up, his tentacles waving angrily. 1,000 ships. We have 50,000 across the galaxy. You want us to destroy 49,000 vessels. "I want you to prove you understand the lesson you tried to teach us," Henry replied calmly. "That strength must be earned. That power requires responsibility. For thousands of years, you have used your fleets to enforce your will on smaller species. That ends today." "And if we refuse?" the tentacled alien demanded. Henry's expression did not change. "Then we will destroy every military installation you have, every shipyard, every weapons platform, and we will keep destroying them until you accept reality. You lost, Counselor. The war is over. These are the terms of your surrender." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species shouted at each other, at Henry, at anyone who would listen. Only remained silent, staring at the human admiral with something like understanding in his eyes. Captain Bates stood in the docking bay of the Vengeance, overseeing the transfer of Council military records. Teams of human inspectors were cataloging every ship, every weapon, every installation. The Council had finally voted to accept Earth's terms after 3 days of debate. The vote had been close, but fear won over pride. "Captain, we found the personnel files for the raiders," one of her officers reported. "The ones who attacked the human colonies 75 years ago." Bate took the data tablet and reviewed it. 3 council species had hired the raiders. The and a species she had never heard of called the. All 3 had paid for the attack, then voted to deny Earth defensive technology. "Send this to Admiral," she ordered. "He will want to see it." The representative was arrested 2 days later. The ambassador fled but was caught at the border. They tried to claim diplomatic immunity. None of it mattered. Earth had evidence and Earth had power. The trials took place on Council Prime, but they were human trials with human judges. The 3 species who had ordered the deaths of 14,000 civilians faced justice for the first time in their lives. President Helen Grant attended the trials personally. She was the granddaughter of Grant, the ambassador who had walked out of these chambers so many years ago. She had her grandmother's determined eyes and firm voice. "My grandmother stood here 75 years ago," Helen said during her opening statement. "She asked for help. She begged for protection. Instead, you taught her that the galaxy respects only strength. Well, Chancellor, my grandmother learned that lesson very well, and she taught it to her children, who taught it to me, who taught it to my children. 3 generations remembered what you did. 3 generations built the fleet that now controls this space. 3 generations waited for this day." The guilty verdict came swiftly. The punishment was simple but severe. The 3 species would rebuild the colonies they had destroyed, every structure, every home, every school. They would work until the job was done, however long it took, and they would do it under human supervision. "You wanted to teach us humility," Helen told them. "Now you will learn what it means to build instead of destroy." The galaxy changed rapidly after that. Council species that had ruled through fear now lived in fear themselves. Trade routes were reorganized with Earth as an equal partner, not a minor member. Species that had been oppressed by Council power suddenly found protection under Earth's fleet. Ambassador Vincent Cole took his seat in the reformed Council chambers. He was the grandson of Dr. Cole, the scientist who had designed Earth's antimatter weapons. His grandfather had died 2 years before the fleet returned, but Vincent carried his legacy. "The first act of this new council," Vincent announced, "is to establish protections for smaller species. No longer will size and military power determine council influence. Every member will have an equal voice." The council voted in favor. Nobody dared to vote against Earth's proposal. "The second act," Vincent continued, "is to establish joint research stations. Earth will share some of its technology, but not our weapons. Those remain human secrets. However, we will share medical advances, agricultural techniques, and environmental restoration methods." Again, the vote passed unanimously. The Council was learning to work with humanity rather than against it. Admiral and requested a meeting with Fleet Admiral 3 months after the battle. They met in a private room, just the two of them, and looked even older now, worn down by the weight of his failure. I came to apologize, and said simply, I should have listened when Captain Miller warned me. I should have taken Earth's return seriously. 7,000 crews died because of my arrogance. Henry studied the alien admiral for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Admiral, you were following orders. You believed in your fleet and your training. That is not arrogance. That is duty. But I lost, and said bitterly, you lost because the Council taught us to build a fleet specifically designed to beat yours. You never had a chance. Nobody did. Henry leaned forward. But here is what matters now. The war is over. The Council is disarming. Your people are learning to live in a galaxy where Earth has power. What you do next defines who you really are. What do you mean? I mean that some of your species will resent us forever. They will plot and scheme and wait for a chance to strike back. But others will accept the new reality and work to build something better. Which kind of person are you, Admiral? And thought about that question for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I am a soldier. I follow orders and protect my people. If the Council orders peace, I will keep the peace. Good, Henry said. Because Earth needs allies, not enemies. We won the war. Now we need to win the peace. The rebuilding of the destroyed colonies took 20 years. The 3 guilty species worked under human supervision, every member of their governments participating in the labor. It was hard work, uncomfortable work, humbling work, but they did it. When the last building was completed, the workers gathered for a ceremony. Human survivors of the original colonies stood next to the aliens who had ordered their families killed. There was no forgiveness. Some wounds never healed, but there was closure. Our children died here, one survivor said, speaking to the alien workers. You took them from us. You can never give them back, but you built these homes. You planted these gardens. You proved that you can create instead of destroy. Maybe that is enough. On Earth, a monument was unveiled in the capital city. It listed the names of every person who had died in the Raider attacks 75 years ago. 14,000 names, carved in stone. Fleet Admiral Henry stood before it with tears on his face. President Helen Grant placed flowers at the base. They told our grandmother that we were too small to matter, Helen said to the gathered crowd. Too weak to demand justice. She promised them they would regret those words. Today, the galaxy remembers. Today, the galaxy knows. Earth will never again be dismissed. Earth will never again be ignored. And Earth will never again allow the strong to prey on the weak without consequence. The crowd cheered, but it was not a celebration of war. It was a celebration of survival, of determination, of humanity's refusal to accept a galaxy that valued might over right. In orbit above Earth, the fleet maintained its eternal watch. 1,000 warships, each one a testament to human will. They were not conquerors. They were guardians. They existed to ensure that no species would ever again dare to harm humanity and laugh about it. The galaxy had tried to teach humanity humility through violence. Instead, humanity taught the galaxy that true strength was not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose mercy when destruction was possible. The Council had ruled through fear for thousands of years. Now Earth ruled through justice. And that made all the difference. 75 years after Earth left the Council in shame, humanity sat at the center of galactic power. Not because they conquered, not because they destroyed, but because they remembered. They remembered the lesson the Council taught. They remembered the 14,000 dead. And they remembered Ambassador Grant's final words. The galaxy respects only strength. Earth had proven its strength, now it would prove its wisdom. The future would show whether the galaxy could learn from its mistakes. But one thing was certain. Earth would never again stand alone. Earth would never again beg for help. And Earth would never again allow the powerful to prey on the weak. The lesson was complete. As communicator buzzed, Fleet Admiral's face appeared. Chancellor, the human said simply, we need to talk. All ships, he said slowly, prepare for combat. Space erupted with fire. 1,000 warships activated their jump drives. Space tore open around them, and they disappeared into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, human space fell silent again. But this time, it was not the silence of retreat. It was the silence before a storm.